So let's now focus on what's going on in the negotiations here. We have a special focus on gender, which was one of the themes today at the final day here for us. So what is happening, what is not happening, what needs to happen? And with us to discuss these very important topics, we have two women. We have Menka Goundan, Program Director at the Asian Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women. And Amelia Nairoba, Ministry of Women, Children and Social Protection, Fiji. Terrific to have both of you here. So Menka, you are a feminist researcher, human rights activist, and development program specialist from Fiji. So what are your reflections from the COP so far?
My reflections from COP so far is, well, I think we still have a long way to go when it comes to including gender in the way that we would like to as gender people and as feminists at COP. We still need to have the language around intersectionality in our conversations like health. We also still need to have sexual and reproductive health and rights. We still need to integrate what we have in terms of other commitments like the Generation Equality Forum, etc., into the language we have here in the UNFCCC space. So there still needs to be synergies around what is happening in the what we call the mainstream gender space, be it the Commission on the Status of Women or be it within the Beijing Platform for Action conversations that are also happening right now. So that synergy needs to come. So we are not all there in terms of the language and text when it comes to gender. We are all not there when it comes to being diverse and inclusive in the adaptation conversations as well.
Well, thank you very much, Menka. Amelia, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, for us at the Department for Women, we're grateful to be here as a national women's machinery, basically to understand what actually happens at this climate global space, and having not only having the language but also having our climate change division officers together with us. We get to know what are the gender intersectionalities. If you're not in the room, they're able to have the gender perspective. So that's really important of where we're coming from in terms of having our institutional capacity development for all government officials in whatever space that they are in. They're able to have the gender lenses to be able to identify what are the intersectionalities, identify the needs and concerns of women and girls on the ground. Even if you're not in the room, they're able to identify those languages around it as well. So we'll be able to, provide that policy advice, the right interventions that needs to happen in terms of addressing the challenges and the impacts of women and girls when it comes to climate change and disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Question to both of you. We know that women and youth and children are the ones that are hit the hardest when it comes to climate change already, and it's just going to get worse. So what would you primarily want to focus on? Where do we need to be laser sharp to make this not be such a big difference when it comes to who's hit the hardest? Menka.
This is where intersectionality and the discourse on intersectionality is important within the climate conversation. To recognize women, children, young people, and then the other identities that these groups hold as well. So you can be a woman, but you can also be an indigenous person. You can be a woman, you can also be a woman with disability. You can be a woman, you can be a young woman or an older woman. And the way you experience climate change as a person depends on these different identities that you have. And that is why the push to have intersectionality included in adaptation language, in the Lima work program, within the gender action plan conversations, and in the global goal for adaptation, those things are hence important. And like you said, the disproportionate experience of women and young people and children is, the greatest in some of the ground zones that we have. And if we see the IPPC report for this year, we know that some of the hardest hit places belong in Asia and Pacific. And hence, the women, children, young people from these countries are at the forefront, and having their voices in such spaces recognized, given their vast intersectionalities, is important.
Thank you very much, Menka. So, Amelia, can you run by us what is the situation for women and children when it comes to climate change in Fiji?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, for us in Fiji, incidences of gender-based violence that's exacerbate during climate change disasters. We've been having we reported in our Fiji country gender assessment, the increase of cases of rape and incest that has been happening, and also our women artisans, women entrepreneurs around the country, their livelihoods are affected as well. What resilient programs are we have to map out as well amongst government officials and development partners to be able to address that issue as well, and also having the impacts in the sexual reproductive health and rights, the health rights, the health situations in communities and villages have been affected, accessibility of health services during disaster and climate crisis. Those are some of the things that we've seen has been an issue, which is why, and we're grateful for UN Women who have, through their Women Resilience to Disaster program, the WRD, that we're able to map out and provide spaces for them to be able to raise their concerns, what are the challenges, and see what avenues we'll be able to come up with across government and also with development partners and stakeholders, and ensure that there's support, its accessibility with our women, persons living disabilities, women and children, and also the most vulnerable group in our communities who are able to be provided that support during a climate crisis. Yeah.
So, Amelia, these are major effects in so many areas of society. So, mitigation here, how do we address it? It's very disparate areas that the climate change affect gender and youth. So, how do we focus the mitigation aspects here?
Yeah, for Fiji, basically, like I mentioned earlier, with the UN Women having to provide that space, that's basically one, and also for us, with the ministry having the National Action Plan for the prevention of violence against women and girls, the strategies and plans, and also networkings that we're doing in terms of disaster and climate crisis, that there's support that there is in addressing gender-based violence during climate crisis, and also with the forthcoming women's economic empowerment national action plan, we're also addressing in terms of the strategies and support and plans that we have for women entrepreneurs in the informal, formal sector, providing that some sort of support, and how would they be able to provide food on the table as well. And also now that we have the under gender and climate change initiatives and plans that we already have through the Climate Change Division, the National Disaster Management Office, and other stakeholders and development partners who are we working very closely. And we're grateful again, I must admit, in terms of the support of UN Women through our WRG program, that we are providing that space for our women and also mapping what are the needs are on the ground, and to be able to address these critical issues and identifying what works well and also what we need to also strengthen as well, that we our national our government officials at district and local levels, that we're able to identify the needs and concerns of women and girls on the ground when it comes to climate change and disaster. So probably those are some of the things that we're currently doing at the National Women's Machinery, so that we also identify the intersectionalities, as Menka mentioned, and also mitigate in terms of what are strategies that we need to do that's more resilient and inclusive, and identifying the needs on the ground, and they're addressed accordingly as well.
Thank you, Amelia. So Menka, Amelia, you work with UN Women. You highlighted the collaboration here. So in terms of accumulating knowledge from different parts of the world, I mean, the way you work with these topics, how is this knowledge fed into the UN Women system? Because there is a lot of learnings to be done from the work that is being done in different areas in different countries, correct? So how is this sharing of if I might say, success stories? How do you share these findings and these learnings?
So for us at the Asian Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women, we do collaborate with the UN Women's Asia Pacific office and also beyond in the global space as well. So some of these stories come in the form of statements that we have made in various intergovernmental spaces. The others come in the form of call to actions from various multi-stakeholder dialogues that we have hosted. We just recently, in the build-up to COP29, hosted in collaboration with UN Women, UNDP, UNFPA and UNEP, hosted a multi-stakeholder dialogue in which Fiji was also represented across Asian Pacific. Stakeholders from various entities came together to do a call to action that would help them frame some of the recommendations that we want to give out here in the interlinkage of gender action, gender equality and climate action rather. So those are some examples where we bring together and convene with different stakeholders to ensure that gender equality is within the climate spaces across the Asian Pacific region.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Amelia, and thank you, Amelia and Menka, for your brilliant work here, and truly inspiring to hear what you're doing in this field. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. So, how can these effects be mitigated even more? And we're going to talk about this even more in the next session.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us.